Libby Maxey. She's a senior editor and poetry editor of the online journal Literary Mama, where she has been a member of the staff since 2012. Her poems have appeared in Emrys, Crannóg, the Maynard, and elsewhere. She is a winner of the Princemere Poetry Prize and the Helen Schaible International Sonnet Contest. This year, she also took the Laureate's Choice Prize in the Maria W. Faust Sonnet Contest and was shortlisted for the Bridgford Memorial Sonnet Prize. Her poetry chapbook Kairos in 2019 won the Finishing Line Press New Women's Voices Contest. Her non-literary activities include singing classical repertoire and mothering sons. She lives with her family in Conway, Massachusetts. She comes very highly recommended from one of our first guest speakers, so Carol, and I'm very pleased to introduce you.
I'm delighted to be here to read for you, in part because I hadn't realized until Melissa asked, but I actually haven't done an in-person poetry reading since the pandemic. We've all become so Zoomified that it literally hadn't even occurred to me that it's been since early 2020 that I've actually read things in front of people. So it's lovely to be here actually doing that again, like a human being. As you can tell from my bio, I'm primarily a formalist poet and happy to talk about craft and process and so on in Q&A if people are interested. But obviously that's sort of a broad idea, and the sonnets are my thing. They're not my only thing. I'll start with some poems from my chapbook Kairos and move into a section of poems from my forthcoming full-length collection, Indwelling, and then some new things, which are mostly just because I like them. So, I'm from Conway, Massachusetts, and it's a very rural, small town, and I'm originally from the Pacific Northwest, so I feel like writing poetry about New England is part of embracing being out here, which I have been now for almost 20 years, so it's become home. I'll begin with At the Terminus, Conway Station Road. Conway Station Road is what it sounds like, a former railroad out to the station, which is now a dirt track through the woods to Memphis. At the Terminus, Conway Station Road. Bronze river, shivered silver over rocks, stone ruins at the edges, broken teeth, hard bread, old trestle footings, growing trees. They knew the town was real when there were rails across the water, wine-dark boxcars packed with cargo, lumber, cotton, tin, and shoes, tool handles, apples, cattle, sheep, and milk, and people bound for distant ports. Above the wooded bank, the other bank, there's still the scraping, churning hurry of cars, the city sound of going somewhere else. Below, smooth skimming leaves shape roiling blooms of tiny steel-backed fish. They seed their thin iron shadows on the bottom, like black sparks. If you live near Emrys, Massachusetts, it's obligatory to write Emily Dickinson poems. So I have one for each book, and this one, In the Sanctuary, Amherst, is the one from Kairos. It was inspired by Emily Dickinson lines that you probably all know. There's a certain slant of light, winter afternoons, that oppresses like the head of cathedral tunnels. In the Sanctuary, Amherst. The winter afternoons are as you said, and sitting in the brown, unlighted church, although there is no sound, I hear the lurch of dying organ wind, as if it fled out just before I came. Out through the flues and thin slit reeds, the rigid mouths gave up their unmade music, cancelled breaths corrupt however many hundred leaden avenues above. So with this host of ciphers I sit waiting, and the seconds each expire. We are a cold geography, not so specific to this emptiness. The high heights cluster sharply, and the low aspire, and none of us will speak before I go. Probably as close as I get to political poetry. Obviously there's a wintry theme here, because even before today I was feeling it. So the next one is December. Actually inspired by a newspaper photograph of a common sight, the frozen apples that you see still stuck on the trees through the winter that were neither picked nor fell off. December. Forgotten fruit, a winter crown of these unfallen apples on the leafless trees. They did not shy from ripening, from sheen and russet bloom, from living ferrets though they shriveled where they sweetened, now serene as all dormant things, embalmed in snow. Spent ornaments, no wisdom would defend the fruitless weight these frozen twigs suspend. My reason is as meaningless as dark, as sinking chill or rising day, or small rough promises of pink beneath the bark. To bear and to be born, still born is all. No lustrous purpose of a lingering red, a silent stay of the stubborn dead. This one speaks for itself as a tribute to another New England institution, Fieldstone Wall. Clumsy, stilted tessellation, moss for mortar, brooding foxes in the gaps. The cows recline against and strain across, and snow unsettles, ties by stealth. Perhaps the leaves are comfort, and the press of brush, a touch, a consolation. Are the roots that heave beneath companions? Is the crush of leaning trunks, the scrape of sprouting shoots, akin to an embrace? Decrepit pile, near useless aggregation, near collapse. What hard conviction steadies all the while an incidental, unloved thing? Perhaps endurance is an acquiescence to a softer edge, a slant, a greener hue. This next poem, Song for Ada McLeish, is particularly special to me because it's the poem that got me writing seriously as an adult. I started working on it while I was pushing a one-year-old up the world's steepest hill in a stroller while fairly pregnant with the next sibling, on my way up to Archibald McLeish's farm, which is within walking distance of my house. And I started working on a poem to distract myself from the fact that I could die doing this. Like, it quickly became clear to me that it was a terrible life choice. But I didn't finish the poem for 4 years because I didn't know what I wanted it to be about. And it turned out that I wanted it to be about Ada McLeish, Archibald's wife, who had been a rather well-regarded singer when they were in Paris in their early years together, but obviously she mostly set that by to follow him around as he was Librarian of Congress and fairly well-respected poet and playwright himself. So this is my song for Ada McLeish. I heave the stroller uphill, uphill steep, the rubber singing and my arms like staves. 5 months along, no music in the strain and searing lungs, no beauty in the fear, but mad to keep from tipping back, to keep the self that holds the stage with grace and saves a thought for diction. Now teetering again outside my tessitura. You were here on rougher roads than I, in colder years, who once beguiled soirees, before the trees and turkeys, children, guests in hills remote, with no one home from which to disappear, you held to voice and breath and memory, and Claire de Lune was supple in your throat. I'll finish the Kairos section with Kairos, the final poem in my chapbook and the title poem. It's kind of a mishmash of ancient and medieval myths and practices, which gesture at the way we piece together sort of mythologies to give meaning to our own lives. Also a sense of control in our own lives. Kairos is the perfect moment, the moment of confluence, the moment when things come together just so. Then I will go to you, my dear ordeal, across the burning plowshares, radiant coals. Whatever fire my bare and blameless souls shall tread will be the hearth at which I kneel, attending Hester's rites. I give my bones, still tightly wrapped in offering, but they remain my own, to walk again the way I came, retrieving all your boiling stones. What love, my stubborn hand, my proof, a sturdy blanket for the searing iron, coins for Karen, Orphean strings, the lyre upraised across my palm will be the roof that shelters us beside the underworld. I choose our passage, pay with fingers firm. My full-length collection, Indwelling, likely to be out by the end of next year, explores various ways of being inside, which is a pandemic theme if ever there was one. And there is a pandemic section, but I'm going to spare you any of those poems because I think we're all sick of it. But it actually begins with a section of poems about being inside works of art and kind of conversing with other poets and artists. So here, a new old saying opens the collection, which comes around to its own way of saying that there's nothing new under the sun. A new old saying. It may be we are like the chickadee, our set of songs and calls expressive, but familiar, collocations standard cut, a few clean notes to show our quality, a gutsy cluck to buff our narrow rut. The indignant ruffle seems our own, and is, and so the high thin shims of our lawn, but given, too, as filaments that warm skin. Our words are the appurtenances of our kind, utility and charm. And let us not suppose that ours may be the most important, conjuring the most important things. Each utterance a ghost of millions, each bon mot a surety. We keep on whistling on the weathered coast. When I wrote this, I told my writing group that this was my internet poem, where we're all whistling on that weathered coast. They felt like that ruined it a bit. It's the truth. So in that same vein, this next poem is a conversation with Robert Frost, who was so much more generous in his poetry than in his ideology. He was really such a pill, but but again, his poetry is a much more empathetic place to be. So this poem, Roadless, plays on both the conceit and the rhyme scheme of The Road Not Taken. Roadless, after Robert Frost. With all the gaps in the yellow wood, there could have been 1,000 roads, or none. Indeed, not one I could feel sure of. All roads may be good enough, but what of episodes of stumbling through the brush? A self-made man can make a way through anything. It only makes sense. Those who wait for something stay as if submissive to the day because they do not know mistakes are always someone else's. But what if forward movement fails to equal virtue? What among the trees does forward mean? The trails imagined by impatient males may not be triumphs to be sung by poets. And aren't the visions of the lake and well curve, though a doubtful gift, some recompense for what it takes to circle back in your own wake and settle for another shift in an uneasy place? The core of Indwelling is a set of poems based on psalm texts, which are a way into stories about abandoned homes in various stages of dereliction. This poem, Dominus Illuminatio, is about a house at the end of my street, which hasn't been inhabited for decades. And yes, I did go up and look in the windows like a creepy, creepy person in order to write this poem. Dominus Illuminatio. He shall keep me safe in his shelter. He shall hide me in the secrecy of his dwelling. Psalm 27:5. You left the blue glass bowl where western light would pool. The birch was slighter then. You left the lace-edged curtains open to the fields to make your tiny kitchen and the old tin glow, to match the rugs with fading. All prepared, your lamp with oil, your table with two cloths, white spread smooth on bordered white, the crescent griddle on the small wood stove. You left so long ago, I do not know whose face I seek, whose sanctuary I trespass by standing at your broken threshold, peering past your steadfast door. The trees rise up with starlings, and the lilacs bloom again. Of whom then shall I be afraid? This one is from the same sequence, although it's about a cellar hole in the woods. And small towns in New England, being small towns in New England, you usually know whose house that was. So I do have a real story to go with this one that I built into the poem. Deus, Deus meus ad te luce. My soul is content as with marrow and fatness. Psalm 63:5. 1785. Elizabeth died, and Anna came to live on Cricket Hill. A farm needs hands. This hole along the trail, a sunken room, supplied as much as she could keep from spoiling. Cask of moss for winter apples, carrots here in crates of sand, the cabbages in earth, a shelf for squash. Sometimes potatoes saved them when the grain and meat were gone and shad not running. In September's shadow, all day long they harvested and stored to be assured of March. At dusk they walked to town to visit, 2 miles down the rocky track, each carrying a child, and in the other hand a brand to warn away the wolves.